Hey, I'm Brian Van, sportbiketracker.com, and today we're going to show you what it takes to install the K-Tech 20 IDS fork cartridge kit into the Ninja 400 front forks. Okay, the Ninja's sitting here. It is race ready. We're going to take it for its maiden voyage this weekend with Sportbike Track Time at Grattan Raceway. Installing the fork cartridge in this stock fork is quite a journey. We did it before on the R3, right? And that turned out great. Max is riding that bike real well. The bike's a lot of fun to ride. Doing this requires not only removal of the fork and disassembly of the fork, but you also have to do some machining to remove the hydraulic lock that is effectively pressed in to the inner fork tube. We're going to show you how to do it here. I've done it successfully twice. Okay, I do have a suspension vise. I use a Motion Pro suspension vise that I have. I'm doing the suspension now on the two lightweight bikes that we have. The front forks that I have on the Jigsaw, I did send those out and have those done. Watch this video if you're interested in doing this project yourself. You're looking at it, you're like, no way, dude. Send it off to a K-Tech technician and let them do the install. It'll be worth the investment. This replaces all of the stock internals with a full-on race cartridge kit. We now have compression on the left, rebound on the right, adjustable preload as well. We already have a really good idea of how well these work because the same cartridge kit essentially is in our Yamaha R3, and we've got a lot of time on that. It's performed really, really well for us. Caleb's going to do the best he can to put this together because I'm not going to BS you. That is one hell of a project if you decide to tackle it yourself. All right, here is our right leg. This is the one that we're going to use for the rebound side. So break my top cap loose here. I'm going to continue to support the fork. Normally prefer to do that over on the bike. I did not do that in this case. Is what it is. So let's go ahead and wrench this cap off. And then we'll drain the leg. Installing this cartridge kit on our R3, man, does that bike handle. I mean, super, super cool with the end result we got. Max is riding that bike pretty good. Excited to see what we get out of the Ninja. Okay, a little pressure there. All these pieces, adios muchacho, they are going in the trash. Pretty sure that's trans fluid. Kind of let those drip a little bit. Pieces slide out. Spring. Doesn't matter the order this stuff's in there in, you're not doing anything with it, but taking it to your local recycle bin. Stroke it a couple times. Get as much fluid out of it as you can right now. It's just going to help keep the job a little cleaner. Could even let it sit and drip for a while. I don't have that kind of patience, so we're not going to do that. Okay, once you went through all that, we need to loosen the cartridge, the main bolt on the very bottom. Get this bad boy here in the vise. Note, I've got a rag underneath it because we're going to have a little bit of a mess. Okay, I've got my 6mm Allen in there. There we go, bust that loose. This is the one that I made out of an Allen wrench. And the snap-on standard length 6mm that I had. You're going to reuse this bolt, okay? may or may not drop out. Tip your fork over again here, and here it comes. There's your stock fork cartridge. All right, I am going to now clean up a little bit, and we'll be back and I'll show you what it takes to get the rest of the fork apart. Okay, now we need to separate the halves of the fork, inner and outer. Just a little flat bladed screwdriver here, just very gently wedging it around the bottom of the dust seal, right? Super easy. Caleb's got a bad angle. I've got a good angle. We have a snap ring here. It's super easy. When you jump in there, you're going to see that. If you can't see that, you need glasses worse than I do. Bam. Now we need to support the fork tube like we have right now in the vise. Probably just going to move this because we're going to get a little rowdy. And it's just going to get messy. So I'm going to hold here. And you're going to feel this sliding, right? And it bottoms out right there. You use this like a slide hammer, so give it a good quick start. And you'll actually see the seal start to jump out. Don't worry about what you saw down there. All that is simply the bolt that holds the cartridge in place. We're going to let this thing chill out and drip. Start cleaning it, getting ready for the bad part, which is grinding the swag off that hydraulic stop they put in from the factory. Okay, now this is the no fun part here. They show in the instructions for installing the sport cartridge kit using a lathe. You know, effectively what happens is this hydraulic stop is inserted into the standard fork tube, and then this is rolled over. The edge of the tube itself is rolled over. So what needs to happen right now is we need to cut this off. And I used a grinding wheel like this on the Yamaha R3 when I did it. This is the same exact kit. So I'm going to do that now. Realistically, you don't want to watch this. I don't even want to do this. This is a gigantic bummer, right? And you should probably just send these off to K-Tech, but I'm really stubborn and I like to do my own shit. So here we go. Okay, now I've machined the stop off where they roll over the tube, okay? You can see that line that's formed, and it looks pretty uniform all the way around. So now I'm going to try and press this out. You can see I took a couple of 1/2-inch extensions and a socket. I did wrap it in electrical tape just so we're not marring anything up, even though it's not super important inside there. I want to make sure the socket's big enough that it'll sit behind that hydraulic stop, and then hold it here at the bottom. And we're going to begin to press that out. You can see it's already starting to kind of come apart. So it's coming out pretty nicely here. Hopefully we don't have to machine anymore. And you can see we are getting there right now. You want to be careful to make sure you're not slamming the end of the tube down on the concrete. And I realize, you're probably looking at this like, man, that looks a little bit primitive. Well, that's because it actually is. In a perfect world, I would have all the tools that it would take to get this done. Unfortunately, I do not. I have to get a hammer here to finish that up. Here are all the pieces that came out of it. This is all going to be discarded. This is all garbage, okay? Let's take a look at the bottom of our fork leg. See, it is a little rough, a little sharp. Just going to take a standard file, get that cleaned up, and I'll be ready to assemble. Okay, we are ready to go. I've cleaned everything out really, really good. I like to use the Maxima suspension clean stuff because it doesn't dry everything out, okay? Clean this out. I've cleaned out the inner tube. Everything is good to go. Now we're just going to basically follow the instructions. Remember, we're working on the left fork leg first. That's going to be the black top or the compression leg. This rubber bumper is included in the K-Tech kit. You need to drop it in there. Make sure it sits all the way at the bottom. Washer, plastic, make sure that bad boy sits all the way at the bottom. Now I want to come over here and let's get this installed in our suspension vise. I've already slid the fork slider. I inspected it, made sure it was in good shape. I've slid that on the inner tube, okay, and that is now going to need to go into the outer tube. We're going to use Motul 5-weight fork oil. And what I want to do here is just a little bit on that slider before I put it inside. Like so. I'm going to drop a rag on the floor down here because we will lose just a little bit. Okay, next up, we need to put the slider that press fits into the outer tube in place, as well as the washer that goes on top of it. We will then use our fork seal tool to drive that down in there. Okay, we're just finishing that off. You can really feel like when that's bottomed out, it's that really solid sound. Notice I took it out of the suspension vise. I needed something more stable, and you can see that that is now bottomed out in there, okay? Make sure everything moves freely, which it does. Outstanding. Go ahead and just set it back in here for a moment, and we'll get ready for the next step. Next up is our fork seal. Before we put this bad boy in, I'm gonna grease it. This is just a tube of suspension grease. That's all I use this for. Just a thin film. You don't need to get too crazy here, but you want to make sure that at no time is that thing sliding dry. All right, over our outer tube, you want to make sure that you get that over there without creating damage to the seal itself. Slide it down. Using your fingers, just kind of get it started. And we'll use the Motion Pro fork seal tool. It's a 41 millimeter tool that we're using right here. To drive that bad boy home. Need to make sure that we have it down in there far enough that I can get the clip in. That looks good. Now our clip, I cleaned all this stuff off really, really good. Okay, so it's important that you do the same if you're doing this project yourself. You don't want to start the new fork cartridge kit off with debris down in the tubes. Because that happens on its own as the suspension oil breaks down and as the sliders that are in there, those things wear. You know, you have friction in there. You can hear that very positively lock into place. That's going to hold it in there, right? So it's not going to pull apart. Next up is our dust seal. I've also cleaned this really well, and this is another one that we're going to put a little layer of grease on. It was pretty apparent, like we start working on this thing, you know, comparing it to some of the other things that I pulled apart. And I noticed this a bit on the R3 as well. You know, these are budget bikes, and you can kind of see that in the components, right, that are on the motorcycle. Fasteners look a little bit different. You don't need the seal driver to knock this in. Just a little hand pressure should work just fine for you. Go ahead. Yeah, it feels good and smooth, right? Got a little suspension grease on that bad boy. I'm just gonna wipe some of that off now. And now we're gonna be ready to do the cool shit, which is installing that fork cartridge kit from K-Tech. Okay, so we have our compression cartridge. We're ready to install it. I remove the top cap, all the spacers, and we need to drop that down into our fork. Got our standard bolt. I clean this all up, make sure the copper washer is there. And let's get that up in there. See if we can't get that started. Feel like that's a good sign. Okay. My K-Tech cartridge tool. I'm pretty careful. I try to make sure I have the tools all very clean. I use suspension cleaner on them. I blow them out. I want you to torque to 35 Newton meters. That translates roughly to 26 foot-pounds, right? So that's what we're going to roll with. Got a 24 millimeter wrench up top. Go. We are torqued up. Next up, we want to go ahead and put some fluid in there. And then we'll begin to bleed the rod. Just want to cover the top of the damper tube here. Now we'll be ready to begin bleeding the cartridge. It's important to note that right now the inner tube is seated. It's all the way down in the fork, okay? And it's going to stay that way throughout this process. Got my damper rod bleeding tool, and we're going to stroke this about 20 times. You'll literally feel it tighten up, especially on the compression side. Already done this off camera quite a bit. So we're good to go, we're ready. Now we're going to fill the fork tube a little higher. Basically to the top. Once again, the inner tube is bottomed out, okay? We're going to get our Motion Pro fork oil level tool. I've got it set to 190, okay, 190 millimeters. This is really a pretty easy to use tool. Once it's down to the desired level, it literally just stops sucking. This fluid's all clean, the tool's clean. So that just goes right back in the jug. Should be getting pretty close here. And this is just to verify. All right, good to go. Slide that out. Just let that kind of drip away in there now. Seal up my 4-coil bottle. Spring seat washer, spacer, spring, only use a K-Tech spring. Upper spring seat. Let's get our top cap prepared. I'm going to wind it all the way back, counterclockwise, and then 4 clicks in, clockwise. So a little bit of grease here, my O-ring, very thin film there. Now, let's pull up on our damper rod. Until we get this to pass. And then I need to slide the wrench on. Once I get to the wrench flat area, how much Caleb was able to get there, I definitely obstructed your view. Back off the damper rod tool. Thread that down. Got this to 9 foot-pounds. It's a Newton meter conversion. Right there. See, clearly that is not much. Okay, now we can loosen up our suspension vise, which is falling apart on us. Slide the outer tube up, grab my K-Tech top cap wrench. Let's get this bad boy started. Remember, I have a little film of grease on that O-ring. Or if they make a socket in this shape, that would certainly be a whole lot easier to handle. What I'll do too is I'll snug these up on the bike. So much easier to do when it's in the top triple clamp. And then I don't really have to put a lot of pressure on it the suspension vise here. Realistically, it's going to be all sealed up right now with just the O-ring down inside the fork tube. Let's see how we did. Go ahead and compress it as much as you can. And man, it feels really smooth, I'll say that. So that's good. Now let's go ahead and wind it up a little bit. Or a lot of it. Let's see how it feels. Full hard. Oh, you can feel the difference. That was a lot harder to push down. There is our compression leg, ready to rock and roll. Okay, there you have it. That is what it takes to build the forks, installing these 20 IDS K-Tech cartridges. I answer all the comments on the YouTube videos. If you have a question, comment, just leave it there. I do the best I can to keep up with these things. Sometimes there's a lot. I'm happy to answer it for you. If it's something that I don't have the answer to, I'll reach out to K-Tech direct and get that. What I would encourage people is if you're the diehard do-it-yourselfer and you've got a lightweight bike and you want to do it and you have the tools that I showed you here, go for it, man. It's a cool project. It's a lot of fun finding your way through it. If any part of you looks at this as like, fuck that, dude, I am not going through all the stuff he went through on that bike, send them off to a K-Tech technician and have them do it. It's also important to understand that for things like geometry and clicker adjustments and overall bike setup, right? We can help you choose the right spring when you purchase the kit on the site. You enter in your weight, riding style, right? We can get you into a spring that's going to work well for you. But as you really start to build speed and you go to different racetracks, you use different tires, that is where your local suspension tuner really comes in. They'll be happy to work with you, even if you have a bike. Say you did all the work on it yourself and you just want to, get it dialed into that next level. They're there each weekend selling that suspension setup service, and that is worth investing in. And if they do a good job for you and you want to have them do all your suspension service in the future, they'll be there to change fork oil, shock oil, all those good things. And that's stuff that I definitely recommend investing in. I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com.